15.
Thank you very much indeed, and it's great to be here. You get asked to do all sorts of different events as a writer, and some sort of upbeat, positive things like tonight. Others more serious. I was asked to speak recently by Amnesty International, actually. We were asked to read the works of authors who'd been imprisoned in their own country. I chose Jeffrey Archer, actually. Which went down quite well, until I started reading, of course. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm just going to talk about writing, really. I'm going to try and use my glasses. I think that's probably a good idea. I've been writing comedy for a living for about 25 years, and I was just going to talk about my experience and seeing if writing comedy in so many different genres had taught me anything. 15 minutes isn't long, but I'll try and pack it in. I never thought I'd be a book writer. I think I wanted to be I sort of wanted to be John Cleese or Michael Palin or something when I was growing up, I think. But I went off and did English at university, but I was a bit of a waste of taxpayers' money, I think. I remember sitting in the tutorial room and they saying, "So, John O'Farrell, what did you think of Ulysses by James Joyce?" And I was like, I was going to read it, but I left my bag on the bus, and then the library didn't have a copy, and the bookshop was closed on Thursday, and so I was going to... So rubbish, waste of all your money, and I apologise now. But scroll forward 20 years, and suddenly I find myself on Newsnight Review, sitting there with sort of, intellectuals and, high-up people in the arts, and this time I've read the books, and this time I've seen the plays, and I've worked out what I'm going to say. And that very day, V.S. Naipaul won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So live on BBC Two, Mark Lawson turns to me and says, "So, John O'Farrell, what do you think of V.S. Naipaul?" Well, I was going to read it, but I left my bag on the bus, and... So nothing changes, I'm afraid. In fact, last time I was on Newsnight Review, I was on with Gillian, I seem to remember. And bizarrely, I'm in the position now where they're doing my book this week, which is quite terrifying. I write comedy, so if they hate it, I'll just tell myself they were being ironic, obviously. But as I say, I never planned to be a book writer. I started out writing sketches on Radio 4 in a program called Weekending, which some of you might remember. They had these open meetings where various misfits in anoraks would wander in off the streets and give in their sketches. And I was one of those guys. And in the room of uncommissioned writers, along with me, were such sort of wannabes, out of university as David Baddiel and Rob Newman and Jeremy Hardy and Steve Punt and Mark Burton, who went on to be my co-writer and later a very successful screenwriter. And we were all young sort of graduates, hoping to be comedy writers. And that was a great open door then. And we had a sort of state system for developing comedy writers, a sort of apprenticeship, which is fantastic. And I went on to write for TV panel shows and chat shows. I co-wrote, used to write Clive Anderson's monologue at the top of... here's David. I think I've one round of applause for getting here from the House of Commons. He has raced here, so... You're not on yet, David. You're right. Have a drink and relax. I was writing TV comedy, and I used to write Clive Anderson's monologue, and sit in the wings and bitterly complain about him mispronouncing my punchline about Nagorno-Karabakh. And I remember one time I was on his chat show, and the Dalai Lama had been a guest. And I'll never forget the woman from reception popping her head round the door of the green room and saying, "Taxi for Mr. Lama." I think it had happened to him before. I worked on Spitting Image for years, and Mark and I became two of the lead writers for Spitting Image, which was an incredibly exciting thing to do as a young man in his 20s. We were there when Thatcher resigned and when John Major became Prime Minister. So there we were, trying to get something out of boring old John Major with Edwina Currie in his cabinet. We got that one wrong, didn't we? Yes. More peas, John. No, that's right. I had a curry for lunch. Thank you very much. We used to sit around and try and think about what we could say about various politicians, and what was the sort of thing that we could pin down about them. And we had Kenneth Baker. We'd sit around. Oh, he looks a bit slug-like, doesn't he, Kenneth Baker? And someone said, well, we should do him as a slug. And so suddenly Kenneth Baker was a slug on Spitting Image. Journalists were saying, why are you portrayed as a slug? And the poor bloke was on the back foot. I can't believe we're allowed to have this responsibility when we're in our mid-20s. But it was a very exciting time to be writing satire, which was something that was still quite fashionable under that Conservative government. And over in the East End of London, there was this sort of satire factory in this warehouse where they were making clay models of the latest politicians to come to prominence. And then there was the latex moulding place next door, and us writing the sketches for them. And we wrote a sketch for someone we didn't have. I'm sitting there going, I don't think we have a Yasser Arafat for this Middle Eastern sketch. So the producer would go, oh, let me make a call. He'd disappear out. 5 minutes later, the puppet wrangler would come in with Ringo Starr with a towel on his head and sunglasses. We'd go, works for me, that's fine. So it was a bizarre situation, and all this time I was writing political satire and I was putting words into the mouth of politicians. I was a member of a political party myself. I was active in the Labour Party. So I was sort of, in one hand I was trying to sort of, make people laugh at the politicians, and with the other hand I was trying to sort of make certain politicians funny, and I'm not sure it was which was the more successful. I used to write lines for Gordon Brown for his speeches, and if you imagine me trying to make Gordon Brown funny, that's... You've never seen him close the Comedy Store, I imagine, but he can be very funny in a social situation, and he'd ring me up at very short notice and go, hi John, it's Gordon here. I'm just about to go into a Scottish Trade Union conference. You got any good Scottish Trade Union gags? Oh, Gordon, I've got a pile just sitting here, and I didn't know what to do with them. So no, I'd try and sort of quickly rustle up something, and he'd go, oh, that's good, you got the others? So it was quite a challenge, and... There's one time he was about to go on to we've just had the rugby on, and he said, you've got a good joke about, we're just about to have England v Scotland. He was opposite Jeffrey Archer in on the radio programme he was on, and so Jeffrey Archer was sort of singing the praises of England, and Gordon was singing the praises of Scotland, and he said, oh, well, we gave him one which was like, oh, when in Scotland play rugby, it's poetry in motion. When England play rugby, it's like one of Jeffrey's novels. And it got a big laugh in the studio, but then he kept trying to do the same gag again in his own words. So he wasn't a natural comedian, but he could be really good. But then we found ourselves we left Spitting Image and we started writing for Have I Got News for You? And we used to write the bits that Angus Deaton did to camera. The Paul and Ian's bits were very much their own. And there was one time when we'd written a whole load of jokes for... Angus Deaton, and he said, oh, no, none of these feel quite right. And we were quite pleased with them. And Gordon Brown had just rung up and asked for some jokes, and he was in Parliament that day. So we went, well, Angus doesn't want these. So we faxed them through. That tells you how long ago it was. And we're sitting in the green room with the producer of I Got News for You there, and Angus Deaton there, and Gordon Brown comes to the dispatch box, and he starts doing these jokes, and Angus Deaton going, hang on, you just wrote me those jokes. He said, well, you didn't want them, They went down all right. I think the bit where he goes, and with the scores being 4-all, no, it wasn't quite like that. But for years, we'd always had this ambition that we'd write a sitcom, and we would, have a hit show like, One Foot in the Grave or Absolutely Fabulous. Finally, we got the pilot script commissioned, and then we got the pilot recorded, and then we finally got the show on air with a star, BBC One, 8:30. All I'll say is we were big in Belgium, okay? That show was very successful on that particular Belgian television channel. It was a very old-fashioned sitcom, and it didn't come out as I had hoped. And so the day it was moved from its primetime slot to a graveyard slot, I got this phone call, and I thought, oh, who's this? Someone's ringing up to gloat. And this guy went, hello, I am Jan. I am Belgian journalist. Your show is so funny. I thought, is it my brother? Is this Pete? Pete, is this you? Are you having a laugh? No, we love your show in Belgium. It's so funny. And it's still quite successful in Belgium, tragically. But that experience that experience sort of, the gap between what I thought I'd written and what came out on the screen was sort of quite disillusioning, really. And about that time, I had an idea for a book. Now, I'd never thought about writing a book before, but I had been active in the Labour Party for all those years, and I thought a book about all those inchoate Labour Party meetings. Now, there's an idea for a bestseller, if ever I heard one, but it turns out that lots and lots of people have been to boring meetings where, nobody turns up and you're trying to change the world and no one else is interesting. So this book ended up being a bestseller. It got to #1, and it was a complete revelation to me. It stayed at #1 for 6 weeks, actually. It was finally knocked off the top spot by Stalingrad, which I thought was interesting. I think people read my book about being a Labour activist under Thatcher and Major, and then they read Stalingrad to cheer themselves up a bit, I think. So you get those things when, as a writer, you're saying, what book changed your life, and they expect you to say Dostoevsky. Well, my book changed my life. That was a huge change for me. I'd spent years making other people funny and making Nick Hancock funny or Angus Deaton or Melon Griff funny, and suddenly people were giving me the credit, and it was really nice, and it was a revelation. Now, my co-writer, Mark Burton, and I, we'd been working on the film Chicken Run for that summer, and my publishers turned around and said, would you like to write a novel, John? And I was like, oh, well, this is really difficult. So we've been offered the next Aardman film, and so I said to my co-writer, well, why don't you write the film, and I'll write the books. And that's the way it went. And I spoke to him the other day, actually. He's become a very successful screenwriter. I spoke to him. He said, I've just flown on Spielberg's private jet from Los Angeles to New York. And I said, well, I'm speaking at a tabernacle tonight, so it's more for you, mate. It was a revelation to be in the world of books and to suddenly be on my own all that time. I've been surrounded by other writers, and I've been writing in social situations, and suddenly it was just me and my computer working alone all day, and that was a massive change. But it was great because suddenly I was surrounded by other authors at events, and that becomes your social thing. You meet other authors. I bumped into, my first book was a sort of political fever pitch, and I got to know Nick Hornby. We were actually introduced under a system introduced by the Metropolitan Police, where authors are made to come face to face with other writers whose genres they've stolen. I met at some signing event, and they said at the end, I was interviewing him, and they said, now both authors would sign their books out the front. So this 4-mile queue, developed for Nick Hornby, and then about 3 old ladies sort of, took pity on me and got me to sign their books as well, and I tried to make it last a very, very long time. You meet all sorts of authors. I met Chris Ryan, the SAS author, not so long ago. He has a very firm handshake, I can report. I did some jokes at his expense, and he then, everyone in the SAS has a book deal now, I should explain. It's part of the deal when you arrive at Hereford. It's name, rank, ISBN number, You teach you how to strip down a fountain pen in 15 seconds, But I did a few jokes at his expense, and he said, well, I don't know if I can be as funny as John, but we'll have a good laugh later when I take him outside and give him a good kicking. I spent the rest of that evening hiding in the toilet. But suddenly I found myself completely against my sort of career plan as writing books, and I've been doing that now for 15 years, and books have changed incredibly, and the publishing world has changed a great deal over those past 15 years, and we've had the rise of Amazon and e-books and the supermarkets selling shops. I still can't quite get used to the supermarket selling novels. You're walking down Tesco's and you say to the shelf stacker, excuse me, I'm looking for Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Oh yeah, Magical Realists, aisle 7, Do you want to hand me that Middlemarch to the car, So whatever happens with Google and Kindle and all the ebooks and all the digital content, I think people will always need stories. And so I'm now at that stage where I'm launching a very old-fashioned product. I've got a hardback novel coming out. Crazy idea, and I'm hoping it might catch on. But this is my fourth novel, and it's called The Man Who Forgot His Wife. And it sort of poses the question, imagine if you met your spouse as if for the first time. Imagine if you've been with them for 20 years and you met them as if for the first time. My hero has complete amnesia. He has what's called a psychogenic fugue. And I met a guy who'd had this happen to him where he lost all memories, didn't know his identity, didn't know where he lived or what his job was or anything. And it was very interesting talking to him. His brother said, oh, you know, you support Millwall. Was that 2 minutes, is it? That's time, okay. But the brother said, do you support Millwall? Do you support Tottenham? And he said, no, they made it up what he supported. But this is the character that I have created. It asked the question, can you love someone all over again? Because my hero is facing divorce. And he's coming up to a crucial appearance in court. And he sees his wife of 20 years and goes, wow, she is gorgeous. And so the novel says, imagine if you could see your life with completely fresh eyes. Imagine if you could start all over again. And it's a sort of romantic comedy where you go, boy meets girl, and girl goes, no, I've been married to you for 20 years, and I'm not going through all that again. Sorry to overstay my welcome for 5 minutes. I'll welcome you to David Lammy, but thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.